Millionaire single dad sees Waitress teaching his nonverbal son to speak. What he does next changes everything. This is a story about a forgotten melody, a second chance at love, and the voice that brought a broken family back to life. Tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. It was the kind of rain that made everything feel slower. The sky over Elmridge was a deep, sulking gray, the kind that hung low and pressed down on the rooftops and windows like a secret too heavy to hold. The windshield wipers moved rhythmically back and forth as Graham Westbrook guided his black SUV through the narrow streets of the old downtown. Leo sat buckled in the back seat, his small fingers tracing invisible shapes on the fogged glass. He did not speak. He rarely did. But today he was humming. It was a soft, haunting little tune with no words, just a gentle rise and fall like a lullaby carried on wind. Graham had heard him hum it before countless times ever since the day he had come home to stay. The tune lived inside the boy like a heartbeat, something old and deeply buried. Graham had always assumed it came from Leo's birth mother. He never asked. Some things were sacred even in silence. He glanced up at the rearview mirror. Leo's wide eyes were trained outside, following the rain as it slid down the windows in slow, crooked trails. Graham's hand tightened around the steering wheel as he exhaled slowly. He had promised himself this outing would be quick. Just a stop for tea and a snack before heading back to the house. Maybe even a few minutes to let Leo pick out a book. The child liked books. Not reading them, he could not yet but touching them, flipping the pages slowly, his fingers skimming the edges like he was listening to them speak. They pulled into the parking space outside the tucked-away bookstore cafe called The Leaf and Lantern. Graham had found it online while searching for quiet, child-friendly spaces in Elmridge. He had not planned to like it, but the reviews said it had a sensory reading corner, and that was enough. He killed the engine and turned slightly. "Ready, buddy?" he asked, even though he knew Leo would not respond. The boy nodded once, slowly. Graham unbuckled, stepping out into the drizzle and moving quickly to Leo's door. He always parked close just in case. The sidewalk puddles mirrored the warm golden glow of the cafe windows, fogged slightly from the contrast of inside warmth against outside chill. As Graham opened the door and helped Leo down, he felt the familiar tug of small fingers curling around his coat. The boy hated new places. Graham bent down to Leo's level, brushing his damp hair back gently. "Just a few minutes. Then we go home." "Okay." Leo's eyes flicked to his, then away. Graham knew better than to wait for words. Inside the cafe, the bell above the door chimed softly as they entered, muffled by the rain. The smell hit them, first book cinnamon and roasted espresso. Warm, welcoming, familiar. The lights were dim, with little string bulbs trailing across exposed beams and along the corners of the walls. Wooden bookshelves reached the ceiling, their contents slightly worn but well-loved. In the far corner, a few beanbags and oversized cushions surrounded a low table cluttered with picture books and laminated flashcards. Graham guided Leo gently toward it, relieved that the space was empty. Just them. Perfect. Then he heard it, a melody, soft and slow, woven into the background of clinking mugs and quiet chatter. Someone was humming. Graham turned toward the counter. Behind it stood a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, tying back her braid with a red pencil stuck through the knot. She wore a forest green apron dusted with flour and what looked like colored chalk. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbow and her head tilted as she moved about the espresso machine, humming under her breath. Graham froze. It was the same tune Leo hummed, almost note for note, the song that had no name, the one Leo had never learned from him. Leo, still clutching his father's hand, stopped walking. His entire body stilled. Then he tilted his head slightly and began to hum, low at first, barely audible, then louder, matching her tone. The woman's head jerked up. Her eyes found them instantly, and for a second everything in the cafe seemed to pause. The girl blinked. Her humming stopped. She looked straight at Leo. Her lips parted. Then she smiled. Not politely, not out of habit, but slowly, like a memory unfolding. She stepped around the counter and crouched, keeping a respectful distance. "Hi there," she said softly, her voice warm but gentle. She placed one hand on her chest, fingers spread, and signed a word. Hello. Leo's eyes widened. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He glanced at his father, then back at the woman. She signed again. Hello. Then she pointed to herself. Sky. Graham felt his breath catch. Sky. That was her name. He did not care. He did not want this. Not now. Not here. Leo took one slow step forward. Then another. He stopped only inches from the woman. Sky slowly crouched lower, lowering herself to his height. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out something, a laminated card with a picture of a music box and 2 musical notes beside it. Leo stared. Then his small fingers reached forward and tapped it once. Then again. He pointed to his chest. His face shone. Graham's voice cut through the moment like a blade. That's enough. Sky blinked, startled. She stood slowly, holding the card down by her side. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to overstep. He doesn't usually respond to strangers, Graham said coldly. I don't know what game you're playing. Sky's face stiffened. I wasn't playing a game. He recognized the song. So did I. It's old. I didn't expect to what? Use it to charm him. Get close. Graham's voice rose a notch. I don't know you, and I don't like people assuming they understand my son just because they can hum. Sky's eyes narrowed slightly. I wasn't trying to understand him. I was trying to speak the only language he responded to. You looked surprised that he did. Graham's jaw clenched. He was already regretting walking in. Come on, Leo. We're leaving. But Leo did not move. He stood there, his small hand now resting gently on the laminated card still dangling from Sky's hand. His gaze was steady. Sky looked at Graham. I think your son remembers something I don't, she said quietly. I'm not asking for anything, but I didn't do this to hurt him. Or you. Graham didn't respond. He walked forward, gently lifting Leo into his arms. The boy did not resist, but he looked back at Sky as they exited. Back in the car, the silence was thick. Graham turned on the engine. The rain had lightened but not stopped. Leo sat quietly in the back, holding something to his chest. Graham glanced back and felt his chest tighten. The laminated card. Somehow Leo had taken it. Graham sighed heavily. He almost turned back. Almost. But pride was a powerful thing. That night after dinner, after Leo had stacked his puzzle pieces and curled up on the couch beside the music box, Graham found the napkin. It was folded and stained, but unmistakable. A stick figure drawing of the woman in the cafe. Red braid, apron. Next to her, a small boy holding a box with notes floating around it. Beneath them, in shaky letters, a single word. Sky. Graham sat down at the edge of the bed and stared at it. His fingers shook slightly. He did not know why. Maybe because Leo had never drawn anyone before. Maybe because he felt something shifting. Or maybe because the tune that lived inside his son was no longer a mystery. It had a name, a face, a history he had never known. He looked at Leo already asleep, the music box resting under his hand like a secret. Graham ran a hand down his face. He did not believe in fate. He believed in patterns, risk, and logic. But tonight, something inside him refused to dismiss it as coincidence. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow, he would go back. Not for himself. Not for curiosity. But because his son had hummed a song with a stranger. And for the first time in a long time, he had looked happy. That was something worth chasing. Even if it scared him. Even if it meant letting someone in. Again. The next morning dawned slowly, with gray light seeping through the curtains like a secret trying to find its way in. Graham Westbrook stood at the kitchen counter, staring blankly at the coffee machine as it burbled and steamed. The rich scent filled the air, but his mind was elsewhere. His fingers drummed against the marble countertop with a restlessness he could not shake. The napkin sat on the table beside him, folded neatly but heavy with meaning. The drawing was crude but unmistakable. Leo had captured the red braid, the apron, the eyes that seemed kind, even in stick figure form. Sky. The name was scratched in rough block letters beneath the 2 figures. Graham did not know what disturbed him more, the accuracy of the drawing or the fact that Leo had drawn it at all. The boy rarely created anything with such clarity. Most of his doodles were shapes or color clusters. But this had intention. This had memory. He picked up the napkin again and studied it. Then he looked over to the living room where Leo sat on the floor, building a tower from wooden blocks. The boy was unusually quiet this morning even for him. His small face was focused, lips pressed tight, but Graham noticed something new. Every so often Leo would hum, softly, that same tune, that same haunting melody Sky had hummed in the cafe. It was like the music had awakened something in him. Graham poured his coffee and walked to the doorway, watching his son. He wondered what it meant. Wondered how long Leo had carried that song. Wondered how Sky knew it. He knew he had to go back. He told himself it was for Leo, but he could not deny the knot of curiosity tightening in his own chest. It had been years since something had unsettled him like this, something he could not predict or control. Graham had built a life around control. His career in private equity thrived because he knew how to measure risk, how to reduce chaos. But Leo was a different equation. Leo had taught him that some things did not follow a pattern. Some things were felt, not calculated. Graham dressed quickly, pulling on a navy sweater and coat, then knelt beside Leo. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "Want to come with me for a drive? We can go get some tea. Maybe look at more books." Leo looked up at him with wide eyes and nodded slowly. Graham smiled. He took that as a yes. As they pulled out of the driveway, Graham noticed Leo holding something tightly in his lap. The music box. He never left the house without it now. Graham had never asked where it came from, only knew it had been in the box of things left behind by Leo's birth mother. It had never worked, not really. The winding key was stuck and the hinge creaked when opened. But Leo loved it. It was his anchor. They arrived at the cafe just before the lunch rush. The parking lot was nearly empty. Graham hesitated before getting out, hands gripping the steering wheel for a long moment. Then he glanced at the back seat. Leo was watching the windows again, his breath fogging the glass. Graham nodded to himself and stepped out. He walked around to help Leo, lifting the boy's hood and guiding him toward the entrance. The bell chimed as they stepped inside, and the warmth of the cafe wrapped around them like a blanket. It smelled the same: cinnamon, coffee, old pages. Sky was not at the counter. For a moment, Graham felt something like disappointment. Then he heard laughter from the back corner and turned to see her crouched near the children's area, sorting books into a wire basket. Her braid was tied loosely today, and a smudge of blue ink streaked across her wrist. She looked up as they approached and blinked in surprise. Her smile was hesitant but real. "You came back," she said. Graham nodded stiffly. He cleared his throat. He wanted to come. Sky's eyes flicked to Leo, who was already walking toward her, his music box clutched tightly. She stood slowly, brushing her hands against her apron. Graham watched as Leo reached her and held out the box. Sky knelt to accept it carefully, as if it were made of glass. She opened it and looked inside, then at Leo. "I remember this," she said quietly. "This music." She looked up at Graham. "I used to hear this song in a foster home when I was young. One of the older kids had a toy that played it. I have not thought about it in years." And Graham frowned. "You were in the system." Sky nodded. "In and out. Different houses. Some good, some not. But that song always made me feel safe. Leo hummed it the first time we met," Graham said. "He has been humming it since I adopted him." Sky looked down at the boy. He stared at her intently, eyes wide and unblinking. Then slowly he signed the word, "friend." Sky's breath caught. She looked back at Graham, stunned. "He knows signs." "A few," Graham replied, "mostly from therapy sessions. He has never used that one before." Sky smiled, but her eyes glistened. She touched her fingers to her own lips and then to Leo's forehead. "Friend," she echoed. Leo reached out and touched her hand. Graham felt something shift inside him, a quiet cracking of a wall he had not realized was still there. Sky stood slowly, Would you like to sit? I can bring something warm." Graham nodded, and she motioned toward a small booth by the window. He guided Leo to the seat, and the boy climbed up without protest. A few minutes later, Sky returned with a tray. "Tea for you. Hot cocoa for him. On the house." Graham accepted the cup but said nothing. He watched as Leo sipped the cocoa carefully, his eyes never leaving Sky. "You were right yesterday," Graham said quietly. "About what?" "About him. He remembers something. Maybe not a full memory, but a feeling." Sky sat across from them, folding her hands. "I never expected to see him again," she admitted. Graham blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Years ago, I volunteered at a temporary shelter. There was a boy there. Quiet. Never spoke. Carried a broken music box. He only stayed for a few days. I remember because he hummed that song. Constantly." Graham stared. That was Leo. Sky nodded slowly. "I wondered. But I was so young then. 17, maybe. It was part of a community program. I never saw him again. Until now." Graham felt the air leave his lungs. Leo placed the music box on the table and looked between them. "You helped him then," Graham said. "And now. Again." "I did not know," Sky said softly. "I just followed the music." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the quiet rustle of pages and the occasional clink of mugs. Eventually, Leo slid down from the booth and walked back to the children's corner. He sat among the pillows and began sorting through the books. Graham watched him. "I cannot explain it," he said. "But when he looks at you, he is different. Brighter." Sky shrugged. "Maybe it is just that we speak the same language. I was like him once. Nonverbal. Scared. For how long years? I did not speak until I was 8. And even then only to one person. A foster mother who sang to me and hummed that song." Sky smiled. "Yes, that is why I remembered it." Graham stared at his hands. "I never learned the full story. His mother, she died before I could ask. We were childhood friends. I was not prepared to raise him. I still do not think I am doing it right." Sky looked at him, her voice gentle. "You are here. That counts for something. More than most." Graham met her eyes and something passed between them. A mutual recognition of pain, of trying, of not giving up. When they stood to leave, Leo tugged on Sky's sleeve. He pointed to the music box, then to her, and finally back to himself. Sky crouched again. "You want me to keep it?" she asked. Leo shook his head, then held it out. "Share." Graham watched silently. She took the music box and nodded. "I will take good care of it. I promise." As they walked to the door, Graham paused. "Sky," he said quietly, "would you be willing to visit us at the house just once? See how he does in his own space?" Sky hesitated. "I do not know if I—" "Just for a little while," Graham added. "I will pay you." She shook her head. "No need. Let me think about it." He nodded. "Fair enough." They stepped out into the drizzle. The bell jingled as the door closed behind them. Inside, Sky stood holding the music box. Outside, Leo looked back at the window, once then reached for his father's hand. Graham took it. The boy did not hum this time, but his silence felt full, content, hopeful. Graham tightened his grip, feeling something he had not felt in a very long time. Maybe not everything had to be fixed. Maybe some things just had to be remembered. And maybe music could lead them both home. The next afternoon arrived wrapped in quiet sunshine, the kind that slanted through windows and warmed the edges of the hardwood floor in Graham Westbrook's home. His estate was modest by Millionaire standards, tucked into the hills just outside Elmridge, with wide-open rooms and long stretches of glass that looked out over trees, swaying gently in the breeze. It was the sort of place that felt too quiet, sometimes too still. But today, the air inside the house felt charged with something else entirely. Anticipation. Graham stood at the kitchen island pouring water into a kettle with hands that moved automatically, though his mind was far from the task. Leo was in the living room lining up his puzzle pieces on the thick cream-colored rug. Every few minutes he glanced toward the front door as if sensing something was about to change. Graham had told him she was coming. He had not said much else. He had not needed to. Leo understood more than most people gave him credit for. Graham looked at the clock. She was late. Not much. Only about 7 minutes. But that was long enough for doubt to creep in and whisper all the reasons why she might not show up. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she had realized this was too strange, too personal. Maybe she was afraid. Or worse, maybe she had never meant to come at all. Then the sound of tires on gravel pulled Graham from his thoughts. He moved to the window and watched as the same battered sedan from the cafe turned into the driveway. It slowed to a stop, and a moment later, Skye Bellamy stepped out. She wore jeans and a soft lavender sweater, her red braid loose today, curling over one shoulder. A canvas tote hung from one arm, bulging with what Graham assumed were the tools of her trade. Flashcards, books, maybe toys. She looked up at the house and paused. For a second, she simply stood there, taking in the place. Then she squared her shoulders and walked up the stone path to the door. Graham opened it before she could knock. "Hi," she said, a little breathless. "Hi," he replied, stepping aside. "Come in." The air shifted as she entered. Leo sat up straighter on the rug, his eyes locking onto her the instant she stepped into the room. Skye gave him a small wave. "Hey there," she said gently. The boy stood slowly and padded across the room to her. Without a word, he reached for her hand. Graham felt something tighten in his chest. Skye knelt and opened her tote. From it, she pulled out a laminated card with two hands forming a symbol. "This means friend," she said, signing the word as she spoke. Leo stared, then slowly raised his hands and mimicked the gesture. "Friend." Graham exhaled slowly. Skye looked up at him with a smile. "Where would be good for us to work?" she asked. Graham motioned toward the open living room. "Here is fine." She nodded and moved to the rug, sitting cross-legged and unpacking more materials. A whiteboard, a small bag of sensory toys, a soft scarf. Leo followed her curiosity, lighting up his features. For the next hour, Graham watched from the kitchen doorway as Skye worked with Leo. She spoke slowly, clearly, pairing each word with a sign. She showed him a flashcard with a sun and signed the word. Sun. She showed him a picture of a house and signed home. Leo responded in ways Graham had never seen before. He tapped pictures. He pointed. He nodded. At one point, he even tried to form a sound with his mouth. His little face scrunched in concentration as he struggled to shape the word home. Skye beamed at him. "That is it," she said. "You are doing it." Graham stood, frozen coffee cooling in his hands. It felt like watching something sacred, something private. Leo was reaching, trying, connecting, and it was not with him. That truth stung in ways he had not expected. For years it had been just the two of them. Graham had been everything, father, guardian, interpreter of silences. But now here was this woman, this stranger, stepping into their world and unlocking doors he had not even known existed. He told himself it was good, that it was progress, that this was for Leo. But deep down beneath the pride and the gratitude, jealousy flickered. He did not want to feel it, but he did. After the session, Skye packed up her things and stood. Leo reached out, brushing her sleeve with his fingers. She looked down. "I will come back," she said gently. "I promise." The boy smiled and nodded, and Graham walked her to the door. She paused before stepping out. "Thank you for trusting me," she said. "I know it is not easy." Graham nodded. He wanted to say more, but the words caught in his throat, so instead he held the door as she stepped into the afternoon light. Her car disappeared down the driveway. Graham stood there for a long moment before returning inside. Leo was back on the rug, drawing on the whiteboard with one of the markers Skye had left behind. Graham sat beside him. The board showed a simple house, 2 stick figures, one small, one tall, and beside them another figure with a red braid. Graham felt a lump rise in his throat. That night, as he tucked Leo into bed, the boy reached under his pillow and pulled out the music box. He opened it and hummed the tune softly. Then he signed one word. "Skye." Graham brushed his hand through Leo's hair. You like her, huh, buddy? Leo smiled. It was small, shy, but real. Graham sat there for a while after Leo fell asleep staring out the window. The stars blinked in the distance, quiet and cold. But inside, something warm stirred. Something dangerous. He was starting to hope. And hope, he knew, was not something you welcomed lightly. It had teeth, and it could break you. Still, he could not help it. As he rose and walked back to his room, he found himself humming that tune, just under his breath, just loud enough for the silence to hear. He did not know what was happening, but he knew it was only just beginning. The following Sunday brought with it the kind of sunlight that felt borrowed from spring, even though it was still early autumn. Graham stood by the living room window, arms crossed loosely over his chest, as he watched the driveway through the glass. He had not meant to be this anxious. He told himself all week that this visit was just another opportunity for Leo to learn. Another session. Nothing more. But his heart was beating faster than it should have been, and his thoughts kept circling things he could not name. Leo was on the rug again, humming to himself as he sorted a group of toy animals into lines based on size. Every so often, he would look up at the door as if expecting a knock. Graham checked the time. She was early this time. Her sedan rolled up the gravel with a soft crunch and parked behind his car. Graham watched her step out, her hair pulled back in a loose braid, a denim jacket over her usual sweater, the same canvas tote slung over her shoulder. She looked at the house the same way she had the first time, as if reminding herself she was allowed to be here. When he opened the door, she smiled. "Hi again," she said. "Hi," he answered. "Come in." She stepped through, and her eyes immediately found Leo. The boy looked up and beamed, a quiet but unmistakable glow passing through him. "Hey, buddy," she said warmly, crouching to his level. "I brought something new today." She pulled out a deck of illustrated flashcards and a small felt board. As she unpacked her things, Graham stepped back, watching her with quiet fascination. There was no hesitation in the way she worked. She spoke clearly, gently, and always with patience. She let Leo lead. If he paused, she paused. If he flinched, she softened. And Leo responded in kind. He touched the cards. He signed back. He even tried to mimic her sounds. Graham stayed in the background, pretending to read the news on his tablet, though the screen remained untouched. He could not take his eyes off them. Halfway through the session, Sky drew a small house on the whiteboard and signed the word home. Leo tapped the picture twice, then looked up at her. She tilted her head. "Do you like this one?" she asked. Leo nodded. Then he took the marker and slowly, carefully drew a third figure beside the house. His lines were shaky, uneven, but clear. A small figure with a red braid. Sky froze. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Then she looked at Graham. He stood completely still, the moment catching him off guard. Leo had included her. In his drawing. In his idea of home. Sky glanced down again and smiled. "You are doing amazing," she said. "So brave." Graham had to clear his throat before speaking. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked. "Tea? Coffee? Water?" Sky looked up. "Tea would be lovely, thank you." He nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. As he filled the kettle and set it to boil, he found his hands shaking. He braced them on the counter and closed his eyes. He had not expected this, not the ease with which she entered their world, not the way Leo seemed to bloom under her presence, and certainly not the way his own guard had begun to fall. There was something about her, something familiar and grounding and warm. When he returned with 2 mugs, she was sitting cross-legged while Leo played beside her, building a small tower of foam blocks. Graham handed her the tea and she smiled up at him. "Thank you." He sat down across from her, still holding his own cup, though he had not taken a sip. "You are very good with him," he said after a moment. She looked at him, a soft seriousness in her eyes. "I just listen. Most people do not." Graham nodded slowly. He did not know what else to say. After a pause, she set her tea down and tilted her head. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you come to adopt him?" The question was gentle, not invasive. Still, it caught him off guard. He looked down at his mug, the steam curling into the quiet air. His mother was a friend from my childhood, he said. We lost touch for a while, but when she got sick, she reached out. She did not have anyone else. She asked me to look after him. When she passed, it was already decided. I signed the papers a few months later. Skye watched him carefully. That must have been hard. Graham nodded. I was not ready. I do not think I ever truly was, but I made a promise. To her. And to him. Skye's voice dropped. You kept it. Graham looked up and met her gaze. Her eyes held no pity, only quiet understanding. I try, he said. Some days I fail. But I keep trying. That matters, Skye said. More than you know. They sat in a brief silence before she glanced toward Leo, who had now wandered toward the bookshelf in the corner. He was humming again, soft and steady. Skye smiled. He always hums that song when he is happy, she said. Graham nodded. He has been humming it since the first day he came home. Do you know where it is from? She shook her head. Not exactly. I just remember hearing it in the foster home. It was a lullaby one of the older girls used to sing. She sang it to all the younger ones. It made us feel safe. Graham watched her. The lines of her face were soft in the late afternoon light. There was a strength there, too, the kind built from surviving things most people never had to face. You are a survivor, he said quietly. She looked down, a small smile pulling at her mouth. So is he. Graham looked at Leo again. He was holding a picture book now, sitting in a patch of sunlight like something painted in peace. The moment felt whole. Later, after the session ended, Skye packed her things slowly as if reluctant to leave. Leo hovered near her, brushing his fingers against her tote. She turned to him. I will be back next week, okay? He nodded. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her legs. A hug. Skye froze, stunned. Then she knelt and hugged him back, her face pressed into his soft hair. You are so brave, she whispered. Graham felt something twist inside him. He looked away. At the door, Skye turned back to him. Thank you for letting me in, she said. Graham hesitated. Would you stay for dinner? The question escaped before he could think it through. She blinked. Dinner? Yes. Nothing fancy. Just, a meal. With us? Skye bit her lip. I should not. I have to be up early for work tomorrow. Of course, he said quickly. I understand. Another time, maybe? She nodded. Another time. And then she was gone, her car pulling away into the golden stretch of evening. Graham stood at the doorway long after she had disappeared. Behind him, Leo was still humming. The house felt warmer somehow. Less like a fortress. More like something alive. That night after Leo went to sleep, Graham sat alone in the living room with the music box on the table beside him. He wound it carefully even though it barely played. A single note rang out sharp and beautiful. Then silence. But even that one note felt like a beginning. He closed his eyes and leaned back, letting the silence settle around him. In the dark, he could almost hear her voice, steady and calm, saying everything she never needed to explain. He did not know what was happening between them, but he knew he wanted it to continue, whatever this was, whatever it might become. He was not ready to name it, but he was ready to feel it. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. It started with a photo and a whisper. Charlotte Westbrook had never been one to trust easily, especially when it came to her brother Graham. She had watched him carry the weight of grief like a man wearing armor, smiling when needed, nodding politely but keeping the world at arm's length. After all, he had lost his childhood best friend and inherited not only the memory of her, but her child, Leo, a boy who barely spoke and needed more than anyone could have prepared for. So when Charlotte noticed the change in him, she became uneasy. She saw the way he paused by the window on Sunday afternoons, as if expecting someone. She saw the faint, unfamiliar softness in his voice when he mentioned the woman who came to help Leo. Skye, he had said casually. Just a volunteer. Just helping with communication. But Charlotte had lived long enough to know the difference between gratitude and attachment. She could see the danger even if Graham couldn't. One day while visiting the house, she saw a note on the fridge written in unfamiliar handwriting. It simply read, "Next Sunday. Same time." That was all she needed to see. Telling herself it was about protecting Leo, not interfering. Charlotte hired a private investigator based in Elmridge. She kept her instructions minimal. "Look into Sky Bellamy," she said. "Works at a bookstore cafe, helps with special needs children recently connected to my brother and his adopted son. I just want to know if there's anything we should worry about." 2 weeks later, a manila envelope landed on Charlotte's doorstep. Inside were 2 photos, a thin report and a short audio file. The first photo showed Sky standing outside the bookstore, her hand resting on the shoulder of a man Charlotte didn't recognize. The second photo showed the same man again speaking to her in the alley behind the cafe. His posture was close, his expression intense. Sky looked uncomfortable. The report listed his name as Devon Hart Sky's ex-boyfriend. A man with a string of fraud charges and a sealed court case involving stolen medical debt. Sky had once been listed as a co-defendant, but there had been no conviction. Then came the audio clip. Charlotte plugged in her headphones and hit play. At first it was muffled, then a voice came through Sky's voice. "He is rich. If I play this right, maybe I won't have to worry about money ever again." Charlotte froze. She rewound it, played it again. The words didn't change. It took her 2 more days to show it to Graham. She waited until Leo was out of the room. Then she pulled out her phone, sat across from her brother in his quiet study, and hit play. The words echoed off the bookshelves. Graham didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, jaw-tight expression, unreadable. When it ended, he looked up slowly and asked, "Where did you get this?" Charlotte folded her hands. "I had someone look into her, just in case. She's not who she says she is," she added gently. "I know you want to believe in people, but think about Leo. Think about what could happen if she's not here for the right reasons." Graham said nothing. He stood, walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. That Sunday, Sky arrived like always, early, smiling, her canvas tote over her shoulder. When Graham opened the door, he didn't smile back. He stepped aside and let her in without a word. Leo was already sitting on the rug with a pile of blocks. The moment he saw her, his face lit up. "Hey there, little lion," Sky said gently. She crouched down, reaching for his hand, and he smiled as he took it. Then Graham's voice cut through the moment. "We need to talk." Sky looked up, startled. She stood slowly and followed him into the dining room. He pulled out his phone and tapped play. Her voice filled the air. "He is rich. If I play this right, maybe I won't have to worry about money ever again." She went pale. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Does it matter?" Graham said coldly. "Was any of it real, or was this all just a way to get close to my son? To me?" Sky took a slow breath. "That's not what it sounds like. I swear to you." "Then what is it?" he demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you used Leo to manipulate me." Tears welled in her eyes. "You think I would use Leo? You think I could do that? After everything I've seen, everything he's been through?" She took a step forward. "I care about him, Graham. I care about both of you." His jaw tightened. "I think you should leave." She stood there frozen for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "I thought you were different," she said quietly. "But you're just another man who only sees what he's afraid of, not what's actually in front of him." She turned and walked back to the living room. Leo had stopped playing. He was sitting on his knees, his small hands curled into fists, eyes wide with confusion. Sky knelt beside him. "You are so brave, sweetheart," she whispered. "So brave. Don't let anyone take that from you." She kissed the top of his head. He leaned into her for a second, as if he knew this was goodbye. Then she stood, picked up her tote, and walked to the door. She didn't look back. Leo ran to the window and pressed his palms against the glass, staring after her car as it disappeared down the road. Graham stood behind him, silent. Leo whimpered, then whispered one word, barely audible. "Daddy." It was the second time Leo had said it aloud. and Graham felt like he was shattering. That night Leo didn't hum. He didn't draw. He didn't look at his books. He just sat by the window holding his music box, waiting for something that wasn't coming back. Graham tried everything. A new puzzle, a trip to the park, pancakes with whipped cream and strawberries. But Leo barely touched his food. He wouldn't meet Graham's eyes. And for the first time since becoming a father, Graham felt like a stranger in his own home. Several nights later, after Leo had gone to bed, Graham sat alone in his study, staring at the voice recording. His finger hovered over the play button. He pressed it. He is rich. If I play this right? He paused. Then he called the investigator. I want the full version, he said. Unedited. I want everything. What arrived the next morning broke something open inside him. The original recording was longer, over 3 minutes. Graham listened. The voice of a co-worker came first. So, how's the new gig? Sky's voice followed. It's not a gig. It's just this little boy. He's amazing. I don't even know if I'm helping him, but when he smiles at me, it feels like maybe I'm doing something good for once. The co-worker laughed. Still nice that the dad's loaded right. Sky didn't miss a beat. He is rich. If I play this right, maybe I won't have to worry about money ever again. A pause. Then her tone sharpened. But I'd never take anything from him. I wouldn't touch a cent. Money doesn't fix anything, not what that boy needs, and not what his dad's going through either. Graham sat back slowly. He felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. He had made a terrible mistake. He had doubted the one person who had seen Leo, who had helped him find his voice, who had treated them both with nothing but honesty and care, and he had sent her away. He looked at the music box resting on Leo's nightstand. He closed his eyes. I'm going to fix this, buddy, he whispered. I don't care how far I have to go. I'm going to bring her back. And this time, he wouldn't let fear destroy what mattered most. The next morning arrived like an unfinished apology. Graham Westbrook stood in the hallway just outside Leo's bedroom door, listening to the quiet shuffle of small feet and the occasional squeak of a marker being dragged across the whiteboard. Leo had stopped using his voice entirely in the last few days. Even the humming had faded into silence, replaced by that eerie stillness that now haunted the corners of every room. Graham rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand and walked slowly into the kitchen. The sunlight was already beginning to stretch across the floor, warm and wide, but the house still felt cold. He had not slept well. Not since hearing the full recording. Not since realizing that he had driven away the one person who had managed to bring light into Leo's world. And he had done it with barely any hesitation. All it had taken was a few words twisted and cut by someone else, delivered by a sister who had thought she was protecting him. He knew Charlotte meant well. She always had. But this time she had been wrong. And so had he. He sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, and opened his laptop. The investigator had also included the name of the co-worker who had made the joke in the original audio. Graham had no intention of contacting them. What mattered now was Sky, where she had gone, whether she was still in town, whether she would even talk to him if he found her. He pulled up the search tab and typed in her name again. There were no social media profiles that matched, no LinkedIn, no personal website. The only thing that came up was the name of the bookstore cafe where she had worked, the Leaf and Lantern. He called. A girl answered the phone, young, distracted. When Graham asked if Sky Bellamy was working that day, the line went silent for a moment before the girl answered. She does not work here anymore. She left last week, did not leave a number. Graham's heart dropped. He thanked the girl and ended the call. Leo walked into the kitchen, then still holding the music box against his chest like it was a lifeline. Graham knelt beside him. Hey, buddy, he said gently. I am going to find her. I promise. Leo looked up at him, his eyes wide and solemn. He nodded once. They packed a bag together that afternoon. Just the basics. Some clothes, snacks, a few of Leo's favorite books. Graham told his assistant to clear his schedule indefinitely. He told Charlotte nothing. Not yet. He needed to do this on his own. He strapped Leo into the back seat and placed the music box on his lap. Then they drove. He had no map, no address, just a quiet conviction that he had to try. Every mile they covered felt like peeling away a layer of guilt. They started with the edge of Elmridge, checking the smaller towns nearby. He visited every bookstore and every cafe asking the same question. Have you seen her? Red braid, early 30s, kind eyes. Most people shook their heads. A few thought they might have. One waitress in a roadside diner said she remembered someone like that passing through and asking if there were any volunteer centers nearby. That was the first lead he had. They followed it. Town to town. Highway to highway. Leo stayed silent but alert. His eyes always searching his fingers, always clutched around the music box. On the third day, they reached a small town that barely appeared on the map. Miller's Creek. It was quiet and surrounded by fields, the kind of place people drove through without stopping, but something about it felt right. Graham parked outside a community center with chipped paint and hand-drawn posters taped to the windows. Inside, he found a woman at the front desk sorting through a stack of flyers. She looked up as he entered and smiled. "Can I help you, sir?" Graham nodded. "I am looking for someone. Her name is Skye Bellamy. She used to work with children. She volunteered at shelters. I think she may be here." The woman studied him for a moment, then her smile softened. "You must be the one she talked about." Graham's heart leapt. "She is here." "She is in the back," she replied. "She is helping run the music therapy group for the kids. I will let her know you are here." Graham waited in the hallway, his hands trembling slightly. Leo stood beside him, eyes wide, taking in the murals on the walls, drawings of trees and stars and words like hope and grow and home. Then he heard it, a soft, familiar humming, the same lullaby, the tune that had never left Leo's heart. And then she appeared. Skye rounded the corner holding a small stack of picture cards and froze when she saw them. She looked different, tired, distant, but her eyes still held the same warmth. Leo stepped forward before Graham could say a word. He ran to her full speed, arms open, the music box clutched in one hand. "Home," he said, voice clear ringing in the quiet hallway. Skye gasped. The cards fell from her hands. She dropped to her knees and caught him in a hug, pulling him close as tears rolled down her cheeks. "You spoke," she whispered. "You said a word." Leo nodded, his small body pressed against her chest. Graham stepped forward slowly. Skye looked up at him, her eyes red but steady. "You found us." "I never stopped looking," Graham said quietly. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. I should have listened. I should have trusted you." Skye stood slowly, her hand still resting on Leo's back. "I did not leave because I was afraid of you," she said. "I left because I knew he needed more than what I could give while being doubted. I was trying to protect myself, too." "I get it." "I know," Graham said. "I know now. The audio, the recording. It was edited. My sister gave me a version that cut the context. The full version made everything clear." Skye looked away, blinking hard. "Why are you here, Graham?" "To apologize, and to ask if you would come back. Not just for Leo, for me too. I miss you. We both do." She looked at him for a long time. Then she turned to Leo. "What do you think, little lion? Should I come back?" Leo nodded. He held out the music box again like a peace offering, like a bridge. Skye took it gently and smiled. Then she looked back at Graham. "I will come back, but this time only if we do it together. No more secrets. No more fear." Graham nodded. "Together." That night, they stayed in a little inn just outside of town. They sat on the floor of the room surrounded by takeout containers and blankets and watched Leo draw. He sketched a small house, a tall man, a little boy, and a woman with a braid. Underneath it, he wrote one word in big, shaky letters. Family. And this time, Graham did not cry alone. Skye sat beside him and held his hand, and they cried together. Not because they were broken, but because they were whole again. and because now they had the chance to build something real, something lasting, something that no lie could ever destroy again. The next morning in Miller's Creek broke open like a warm whisper. The sun was soft and yellow across the faded curtains of their small rented room. Leo had woken first, as always. He was now sitting on the floor in front of the window, tracing lines in his sketch pad. The music box open beside him, playing its usual broken note. Graham stirred slowly on the edge of the bed, the events of the day before still fresh in his mind, like a weight he no longer minded carrying. Beside him, Sky had already begun folding her clothes into her canvas tote again, her movements gentle and thoughtful. It was strange how natural it all felt, not like pretending, not like visitors, but like a family that had just been away from itself for a while and was now trying to settle back into its shape. Graham rubbed the sleep from his eyes and looked at her. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. "About coming back? About stepping back into that house after everything?" Sky paused with a shirt still in her hands. "I'm sure about Leo," she said. "And I am sure about what he needs. I am still figuring out what I need, but I know pretending we are strangers again would hurt all of us more than trying to move forward." Graham nodded slowly. He looked over at Leo, who was now humming again. The melody rose and fell like something being rebuilt, note by note. "We can take it slow," he offered. "No pressure, no expectations, just the three of us, one day at a time." Sky smiled then. "A quiet, real thing. That sounds like a plan," she said. They checked out of the inn a little after 10. As they drove back toward Elmridge, the roads grew more familiar, and yet the journey felt entirely new. Leo sat in the back seat, his fingers gently tapping his knees in rhythm with the song playing softly from the radio. Graham occasionally glanced at Sky, who was riding in the passenger seat, eyes watching the trees blur past the window. They did not speak much. They did not have to. When they pulled into the driveway of Graham's home, a strange silence settled over the car. It was not heavy. It was sacred. Leo was the first to break it. He unbuckled himself and climbed out carefully, still clutching his sketch pad and the music box. He walked toward the front door and waited without needing to be told. Graham unlocked it and pushed it open. The air inside was exactly as they had left it. Cool, dim, still. But this time when they stepped in, something was different. The stillness no longer felt empty. It felt like the quiet before a fresh start. Sky walked slowly through the house, taking everything in again. Her fingers brushed the edge of the whiteboard where her handwriting still remained faintly visible. Leo had not erased it. It said the word home, drawn in big, uneven letters with a heart around it. She swallowed and turned toward the living room where Leo was already settling into the rug, arranging his blocks and placing the music box at the center, like it belonged there more than anywhere else. Graham stepped beside her. "Thank you for giving us another chance," he said quietly. Sky nodded, but her eyes were on Leo. "Just do better," she replied. "That is all I ask." Graham nodded. "I will. I promise." The first few days passed with an unexpected ease. Sky resumed her sessions with Leo, slowly letting him guide the pace. They returned to flashcards and signs, but also added something new. Music. Sky had brought with her a small roll-up keyboard from Miller's Creek, and she began to play short melodies as Leo built with his blocks. Sometimes he would stop and hum along. Other times he would try to press keys himself. Graham watched all of it from doorways and kitchen chairs, his heart expanding each time Leo's face lit up at a sound or a song. They had dinner together every night. Simple meals: pasta, soup, grilled cheese. Sky often cooked. Graham tried. Leo sat between them quietly but attentively, and sometimes even smiled without being prompted. The 7th day after their return, Charlotte called. Graham let it ring once, twice, then answered. "I heard she is back," Charlotte said without a greeting. "She is," he replied. There was a long pause. "Are you sure that is wise?" "I am sure it is right," Graham said. Charlotte's voice softened. "I was trying to protect you. I know you were. But you made a mistake. And so did I. But I am fixing it." Charlotte sighed. "Does she know what I did?" Not from me. Yet. Charlotte exhaled. Tell her. I will. Graham hung up and went to find Sky. She was in the garden with Leo showing him how to press his hands into soft soil around the roots of a small basil plant. Graham waited until she looked up. Charlotte called, he said. Sky wiped her hands on her jeans and stood. I figured. There was a beat of silence. She gave you the audio, didn't she? The fake one. Graham nodded. She thought she was helping. She was wrong. Sky nodded slowly. I am not angry, she said. Not anymore. Just tired of being misunderstood. Then she smiled faintly. But I am more tired of running. So I am staying. For as long as you will let me. That night they sat on the porch long after Leo had gone to bed. The stars were out. A rare scattering of silver in the country sky. Sky leaned back in the swing while Graham sat beside her, cradling a cup of tea. He looked over at her, his voice quiet. I think I was afraid that if I let anyone in, I would lose control, that I would be weak. Sky turned to him. You were never weak, Graham. You were hurt. There is a difference. He nodded. And you? Were you ever afraid? Every day. But then Leo smiled at me and I realized I did not want to be afraid anymore. They sat in silence again. Then she reached over and took his hand. It was warm, steady, real. The first time their hands had touched without being pulled there by necessity. It felt like a beginning. The following week, Sky brought something new to the table. A project. She had been sketching plans for a music-based learning center, a place where children like Leo could express themselves through sound and rhythm, a place where they would be safe and understood. Graham looked over the plans carefully, his mind already calculating costs, logistics, timelines. We could do this, he said. We could make this real. She smiled. I want to call it the echo room, because sometimes what we need most is to hear ourselves in someone else. Graham felt the name settle into his chest like truth. Then let's build it, he said. Together. As the days grew warmer and the sketches turned to blueprints and the rooms began to fill with supplies, something else began to take shape too. A family. Not perfect, not planned, but real. Leo said a few more words. Simple things. Music, book, friend, mom. The first time he said it, Sky froze. She knelt down and pulled him into her arms, tears falling silently onto his shoulder. Graham stood behind them, his eyes shining. He did not interrupt. He did not need to. That night, Sky found him on the porch again. She sat beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. We are not the same people we were when we met, she said. No, we are not. He agreed. We are better. We are braver. And we are not alone anymore. He turned to face her. I was thinking of something a little crazy. Sky smiled. I am listening. What if we got married? Not in a year, not next month. What if we just did it, soon, quietly? Here. Sky blinked. You do not even have a ring. Graham grinned. I will get you one tomorrow, or you can pick your own. I do not care. I just know I want you in our lives permanently. She laughed a little, then looked up at the stars. That sounds like the craziest, best idea I have ever heard. Then she kissed him. The kind of kiss that settles questions. The kind that makes promises without words. Inside the house, Leo was drawing again. 3 figures this time holding hands under a sky full of music notes. And at the bottom, one word written in large, bold letters. Forever. And outside, the wind carried the tune of a lullaby across the night. A melody that had once been broken, but was now whole again. Just like them. Spring arrived like a held breath finally released. The hills around Elmridge turned a soft green and tiny white flowers pushed their way through the earth like they had been waiting for permission. The breeze smelled of new things, and the days stretched longer as if time itself had decided to linger a little. Graham stood on the porch of his house just after dawn, a mug of coffee cradled in his hands, as he watched Leo chase a butterfly barefoot in the grass. He could hear Sky's voice drifting through the open kitchen window, humming that same lullaby. It had become more than a song now. It had become a language between them, a memory and a promise, and a thread tying everything together. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt lived in. There were crayons on the counters and music books stacked in corners. Leo's art covered the fridge, little stick figures in bright crayon, each one smiling. And in every picture, Sky was there with her braid and her soft eyes and her arms wide open. Home had taken shape, not in the walls, but in the people who now filled the space with warmth. And it was only just beginning. The wedding came quietly on a Saturday morning with no announcements, no fancy invitations, no long speeches. It happened beneath the big oak tree in the backyard where Leo had once planted a row of pinwheels. They still turned in the breeze like they were spinning for joy. Maggie from the Miller's Creek Bakery had insisted on officiating, even though she had never done it before. She arrived with a dusty book, a wide grin, and 2 lemon pies in a box tied with string. Sky wore a white dress that reached just above her ankles, soft and simple with a crown of tiny wildflowers woven into her braid. She was barefoot. She said shoes felt too formal for something that had grown from the earth like this had. Graham wore a button-down shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows and no tie. Leo stood between them wearing suspenders and a shy smile holding the rings in a small velvet box. He had drawn tiny hearts on the inside of the lid when no one was looking. Maggie cleared her throat and looked between them. "Well," she said, "I do not have any fancy lines memorized, but I do know this. Love that has been tested and still comes back stronger is a love worth holding on to. So let us just get to it. Graham, do you love this woman?" "Yes," Graham said without hesitation. "Always." "And Sky, do you love this man?" Sky looked up at him and nodded. "I do." Maggie grinned. "Then I pronounce you family. You may kiss your girl now." They did. And the world seemed to tilt a little. When they pulled apart, Leo clapped loudly, then stepped forward and tugged at Sky's hand. "Mom," he said clearly. It was the second time he had said it, but this time in front of everyone. Sky knelt and pulled him close, tears filling her eyes. Graham joined them and wrapped his arms around both. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing. After the wedding, they laid out a picnic under the tree. Maggie's pies were devoured before noon, and Leo fell asleep in the grass, his head on Sky's lap, while Graham read quietly from a children's book about stars and promises. The wind moved gently through the leaves, and everything felt slow and safe and sacred. In the months that followed, the Echo Room opened its doors in the old brick building on the edge of town. It had once been a laundromat, but now it was filled with color and light and the sound of music. Children came from nearby towns, some with speech delays, some with anxiety, some who simply needed a place to be themselves. Sky ran the sessions and Graham funded every inch of it silently from behind the scenes. He never wanted his name on the wall. He only wanted the door to stay open. Leo flourished. He spoke more. He laughed. He even performed once during one of the music days at the Echo Room, playing a soft melody on the keys while the other children clapped. Sky cried quietly in the back row. Graham stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her back, steady and proud. One evening, Graham came home to find Leo in the kitchen making a sandwich with an apron on backward and peanut butter on his nose. Sky was sitting on the floor, laughing so hard she was crying. Graham paused in the doorway just watching, and in that moment, he realized something that took his breath away. He had spent so long trying to protect Leo from pain that he had almost forgotten what joy looked like. But here it was, messy, loud, beautiful. Later that night, Graham and Sky sat on the porch again, the stars blinking overhead. Leo had fallen asleep with a book still open on his chest and the music box resting nearby. Graham reached over and took Sky's hand. "Did you ever think we would get here?" he asked. Sky shook her head. "No, but I think part of me always hoped, even when it hurt." He nodded. "Me too." Then he looked at her. "Thank you. For everything." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up. Not on him. Not on me." A shooting star passed overhead then, a perfect line of silver across the sky. Sky sat up and pointed. "Look." Graham followed her gaze. "Make a wish," he said. Sky shook her head. "No, I do not need to. That star is not a wish, it is a promise." Graham smiled. "Then let us keep it." Always inside. Leo stirred once, then settled again, his small fingers brushing the music box. In the dark, its single broken note echoed once more, soft and clear like a heartbeat. And outside, under the stars, a family sat in quiet contentment, their love stitched together by trial and trust, and the bravery to begin again. They had been lost once, but they were home now, and this time they were not going anywhere. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story moved, you let us know in the comments. And if you believe in stories that remind us how love can grow in the quiet places, how forgiveness can build a home, and how one voice can change everything, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a moment. Your next emotional journey is just one click away. Tap the video on your screen now. We promise it is one you will not forget. Thanks for being here. We will see you in the next story.